Hi there YouTube, Extreme Trains here. So I'm coming to you with what I understand is at least the final of the single pack or core pack engines from the 2025 Trackmaster 3/4 relaunch. And that is Nia, who I'm reaching down to pick up off my floor. Here she is. Finally managed to find her. Interestingly, she seems to have been perhaps a function of the lessons we've learned from Nia, which is that she's a bit of a peg sitter. So as I understand it, I think there's only one of her per box or per case of these that gets put out, which means it's actually been really hard for me to find and harder than the other engines, which is Percy and Thomas, who are currently available in Australia as the single packs. But that's not to say any of them are easy to find. These are just getting put on shelves and they are flying off the shelves. Everywhere I go, they are being absolutely snapped up. And you can tell they're not staying around for very long. So let's complete this installment of these episodes before my duck arrives from the UK. What are you waiting for? Let's do it. Okay, so we'll take a quick look here at Nia's packaging. You can see it's the standard, I say now standard, motorized packaging. What I have noticed, and this is only just kind of coming to my brain today, we've got the American spelling of motorized here with a Z instead of an S. I understand the versions in the UK actually have an S, so perhaps for anyone counting, it's a sign that this stock that gets sent to us from Australia is the US stock rather than the UK stock, to the extent there's a difference. I don't know if that is useful information to anyone, but perhaps it helps some of you out. You can see we've got a CGI render here of Nia. We've got the 80th logo. We've got her here on the side. Come to the bottom again. My favorite little barcode. Yep, there she is. There's her little face. And again, we come around to the back and we have finally got the other engines that you can collect here shown on the back. But again, what is confusing about this is that now that I've seen some more of these, it seems quite clear that only these three are in the first case, the first wave, and then I suspect these three will be in the second wave. But overseas, it's different, and so I think it would be better for them to group them, I don't know, via waves or something, so that you aren't going to every shop looking for these ones at the moment when you're just never going to find them, I don't think. Yeah, all that normal blah blah, no one cares about that. All right, let's get her open and take a look. Here is Nia. Let us do a little spin before we talk about some of her details. Okay, so we'll come in and take a closer look. You can see this is what we're dealing with in terms of her face. Quite a good Nia face, but I think her forehead is too big. I understand what they were going for. She does have a big forehead, but I think this perhaps is a bit too big, and you can see here it's very pronounced. So I just don't know if that's quite right, but otherwise that's nice to see that we've got there. We've got these cylinders which kind of protrude through the plastic, which is really interesting. I've never seen them do anything like that before. Also separately painted, which is nice. We've got her little pump here, which someone's definitely told me what it was in a previous review and I've forgotten already, and I apologize. We've got a little lamp here, sadly not printed, but it is there. We've got the two tanks here up the top along with the dome and the striping. We've got the nice and iconic Nia printing here along the side, and again we can see we've got these portions actually made of black, so the inside of the cab is actually blacked out with the roof and the coal bunker, and we've also got this actually black here rather than just being printed on, which creates a nice 3D kind of effect, which is pretty cool. You can see I got a Sticker Friday version of the cab windows. They have not been stuck on straight or properly. Classic, but as I said, this is the only Nia that I've seen on the shelves, so beggars can't be choosers. And we come around to the back, you can see we've got a very similar back to most of the other engines, no details at all. Come to the top and you can see very large coal deposit overflowing. Would not be safe to have it like that. I suspect they perhaps did them like that so that you hide the switch a bit more. And then we've got the molded black cab roof as well. Coming down to the sides, we've got the same kind of orientation we've got for most of the engines, which is that fake third wheel in the orange. And you can see here, again, they've utilized that little section at the front to screw in that piece to allow us to have these little pop-up cylinder sections, which look pretty nice. Otherwise, we've got the little stairs here, which are very similar to the ones on Thomas and Percy. It really does look like a very similar chassis to some of the other engines. But yeah, I understand we're getting a version with a bit more paint on it in a Greatest Moments Nia pack with an elephant, which is exciting. But for now, this is the only one we've got. So let's put this down, do some comparisons in a moment. We'll very briefly look at the truck. This is just the classic truck that seems to be coming with all of these single pack tank engines this year. Again, it's that kind of hybrid style. We've got the old style truck on the top, but then we've got the new wheels and chassis underneath. Yeah. Pretty basic, pretty boring, but I guess it's good to have something, although what it's really missing is a face. Right, let me go get my previous Trackmaster Nia and we can do a comparison. I don't have the normal Nia, I only have the Celebration version of her, which had the kind of metallic gold, but it's very interesting to see what details have stayed and what have come and gone. So if we look here at the front, you can see we've actually got a more detailed buffer beam on this version, with a lot more detail in terms of the riveting, but everything you can see is a lot more squashed. We do have the Westinghouse pump, but it's quite, is that what it is? I'm saying that very confidently, but I don't think it's right. There, and I think arguably that one perhaps is a bit more prototypical. Although perhaps that one is, they're probably somewhere in the middle of those two is more prototypical. Again, we've got a lamp here printed, but we don't have that here. We've got a bit more detailing on top of the boiler on this version, so you can see the dome and the little whistles and that, which is just totally missing from this larger version. But equally, you can see here that this section was just printed on, as was this little block here for the cylinders, as opposed to this one, which is a 3D mold. Cab is obviously totally different ball game, and you can see again the coal bunker, perhaps more realistic on the previous version, perhaps. And then if we just come down to the bottom, you can see here very similar, but not the same chassis design, because this one again had just the printed orange wheels, where this one's got that actual plastic wheel. And you can just see that again it's a different kind of design on the inside, because this is a much shorter section, whereas this is a much longer screw-in section. So they're similar, but they are not the same, which is very, very, very interesting. So yeah, this is perhaps one of the, I mean, I don't know if any of the Trackmaster 2 engines look great. The proportions on neither of these are particularly good, but Nia is quite a long engine. She's quite a long, short engine. So I actually think the proportions on this one might be a little bit more appropriate than this, where yes, she's taller, but she hasn't got really any longer. As you can see, she's just gotten, you know, taller. So I actually don't know if the changed proportions actually help Nia in this instance. And if we quickly look at the face, I think I actually prefer the original. I like what they've done with the whites in the eyes on this one, but something about the way the forehead looks. It looks too big, but it could be the same. Now that I'm looking at it really closely, I don't know, you be the judge. Do you think that's the same plastic mold, just with different printing? It might be. It might be, which I think maybe just means that these eyebrows need to be a little bit higher up, so they weren't as pronounced in terms of the forehead. But you let me know down in the comments below what you think about that. Now let's compare Nia to some of the new engines from this line. Very important comparisons right here. We have Thomas with my misprinty eyes, which I've noticed quite a lot of them seem to have misprints on them. It's not just this Thomas, quite a lot seem to have eyes that have the whites have not been printed in the right spot, but I digress. We've got Nia then here, and Percy, who I think might be the best of these new engines in terms of how he looks as a total package. I don't think they look terrible together by any means, and they're certainly not bad, but I just don't know if Nia quite translates into this style as well as some of the other engines, just because she is such a short engine, and they have really sized her up in height in this line, which I don't know if that quite works. Interesting though to note that the red that's used on Nia is kind of what I would call the classic running board red. It's much, much brighter than the maroon kind of color that we're using on both Thomas and also on Percy. So this is the same color as the running boards and the switches, but for some reason Nia here has this much brighter red color, which again, I don't necessarily know if that is better or worse or just different, but it is unusual that they've decided to do it that way. So again, you look at Percy and Nia, These two characters should just not be the same height. Nia should be shorter, kind of shorter, but longer than Percy. So we are getting compromises for the sake of fitting into a certain aesthetic, and that is the problem with all of these toys, is that they are trying to fit to a price point, they're trying to fit to a piece point, they're trying to fit to a particular scale and aesthetic, and so you end up with these kind of caricature kind of engines. But yeah, that's what those look like together. So what do I think about the new Trackmaster 3 2025 Classic Nia? I think she's a fine engine. I mean, all these are a massive improvement on what has come before in terms of all engines go, and something that's a bit more realistic. Do I think that she is overall a better toy than the version that came before? Yes. Is it a clear winner like Thomas and Percy and many of the other engines? No, I don't think so. And I think that just comes from the fact that Nia has quite specific proportions which are quite long and quite short, which don't translate super well when the dimension by which these versions of these characters have increased by is in the height. So I don't think it quite works as well as the other tank engines. She's certainly my least favorite of the tank engines, but again, still great. Very happy to have her in the collection, but interesting to see that she's not as much of a clear improvement as some of the other engines have been. But of course, that's just my opinion. I look forward to hearing all about it in the comments below as to what you think about this new Nia. And as always, that's all we've got time for. This is Extreme Trains.